from page 61 of the other people's slavery, on the other slavery, I'm sorry. It also talks about how he set up his on that same page. And the other slavery is by Andrew Resendez. Okay. And this is on page 61 again. Um, the Spaniards would go from conquest to conquest, and they would take a friar or a priest with them. And after they had conquered the town, Cortez would grant to one of the Spaniards the town, and he would call it an encomienda when he gave it to him. And the difference between their encomiendas and Columbus's encomiendas was that they were still allowed to just pay tribute, basically, whatever Cortez decided the tribute was, which was probably most likely gold. And then they were allowed to kind of be anonymous and live in their towns and their villages without worrying about him attacking them, as long as they paid tribute. But he also got slaves in other ways. Two of the most popular ways for him, of course, was war. War was one of the most popular. And if you got a war slave, they would be branded with this particular stamp so that you would know that they were a war slave. Which is an effective way to keep people from running away. And the other thing that he would do was he would use this brand also for ransom slaves. And ransom slaves were slaves that were purchased, well, that had been enslaved by other Indians or indigenous people, and they were sold, usually at a market in an open square, you know, kind of like African slavery, but not without all the crazy stuff that they would do. I got this information out of the other slavery as well. It is on page 63. These symbols are on page 63, and the explanation for them is on page 62. The Crown got to the point that they wanted to try to technically keep people from being enslaved, but since they were so far away and they didn't really have any control over what was going on in the New World, many times people would find ways to get around the law and still enslave people. And that was one of Cortez's way. So one of the ways that the Crown thought that they could stop the encomiendas from happening was to have Indian and African slaves organized into work gangs known as quadrillas. And that is on page 65 of The Other Slavery by Eric Resendez. So this was a way that Cortez, would get work units, because they really wanted the slaves to come and mine gold. That was their sole purpose as far as he was concerned. So as his own quote says, he was here for God, gold, God, glory, and gold. That was his meaning. That was his motive. That was his reason for being here. And he came here with his horses, his crossbows, his armor, and his swords, and he proceeded to just just go across the land, killing, maiming, stealing gold, and doing whatever he felt he needed to do to get what he basically wanted. I found a picture in The Other Slavery of people actually having to pan and dig and work in the gold fields. And this looked like it was very arduous work. And they didn't really care. They were so scandalous with it until they would not use horses to carry the heavy loads because they wanted to save the horses for battle. So they would have human beings do it to the point that they would just work them to death. And because they could be easily replaced, they would just go steal some more slaves or go raid somebody's village and get some slaves that way. So, yes, the Spanish came here to just decimate the populations of the Caribbean and Central Mexico through enslavement and torture and killing and all types of just unspeakable ways to treat other human beings. The second question was, how did the Spanish allies behave? Well, I don't know if I would necessarily call them all allies. I'm sure there were some groups that actually wanted to fight against and beat the Mexicanos because they were the most, populist group of people in that part of central Mexico, and they had the power. So I can see how other people would join forces with Cortez because they wanted to get power. But a lot of times, when he would go to towns and he would enslave people, you didn't really have a choice from my perspective of whether you were going to participate in fighting or not. A lot of times, you were given a choice. When he come up to a town, he would basically say, either you're going to surrender or if you fight, then we're going to come in and we're going to kill everybody, or we're going to make you all slaves. So I don't really think that that's really an option. So either you fight or you die, or you join him or you die, or you pay tribute or you die. I mean, the dying part's always the option that kind of makes it where I don't really think it was a choice. I did read about a lady that was with Cortez, and I know this is like an outside source, but I, I'm just a person that does really thorough research, and because I always wondered who she was. I saw her in a number of paintings when I looked at Cortez, and so I just wondered who she was. So I just looked it up, and she was his interpreter basically, and she was the way that he was able to talk to Montezuma and all of the other Aztec and Aztec people, because she knew both languages. So she served as a translator for him. So there are a lot of people in Mexico who consider her a traitor, and I can understand that perspective, because if she hadn't been his translator and helped him talk and help him understand the language, then he wouldn't have been able to, I don't think, wreak as much havoc as he did. I'm not saying that he wouldn't have still been able to go around and conquer and kill and wage war on all of central Mexico, because that's just what he did. That's who he was. That was his, his MO, as I like to define it. But with someone to help you translate and speak the language, that gives him so much power from my perspective. And with that power, he took it and he pretty much decimated Mesoamerica. He just killed people. So to call them traitors or to try to define that as such, I can't really say that, because based on what I heard in your lecture, the Spanish conquest of Mexico, Tenochtitlan from 1519 to 1521, your lesson from 2020, they didn't really have a choice. So it was either live or die, and a lot of people just chose to live, because without them, Cortez would have never defeated the Aztec Empire. So I think it depends on your perspective and exactly what your level of power was as to whether you could be considered a traitor or not. That is the end of my video, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Have a great day.